So this is Quality Learning Center. I meant to say Quality Learning Center.
Don't open
They
up.
said they spelled learning wrong.
Don't open up.
How do you have ice here, ma'am? I'm literally a YouTuber.
Don't open up.
Ma'am, what do you think about the fraud that's taking place here in Minnesota?
Don't open up. We have ice.
Hello, folks, and welcome back. Buckle up, because we're about to dive into a masterclass in government incompetency, blatant fraud, and an absolute audacity of those who think they can fleece taxpayers without consequence. We're talking billions, with a B, in your hard-earned money vanished into thin air, all while the people who need it most are left out in the cold. It's enough to make your blood boil, and frankly, it should. This isn't just some abstract political debate. This is real money, real services, and real people being ripped off. And when you see how easy it happens and how little is done, you start to wonder, are they incompetent or are they complicit? Let's get into it.
And what do you think about this place being licensed for 99 children
Don't open up.
and getting $4 million over the
Open up. It's ice.
$4 million in the last 2 years?
Go away.
What do you think about that? Are you in
Go
favor?
away.
Are you in favor of that?
Can you believe the audacity? Just think about that clip for a second. This isn't a hidden operation. This is a building, a physical location, allegedly licensed for 99 children, pulling in $4 million. Yes, $4 million of your hard-earned tax money. And it's a ghost town. The windows are blacked out, no kids in sight, and the people inside are telling an independent journalist to don't open up. It's not just suspicious. It's a slap in the face to every single American who works hard, pays their taxes, and believes that their money is going to help those truly in need. This isn't some absurd economic theory. This is real world, in-your-face fraud happening right under the noses of state agencies. It's like hiring a security guard to watch your house and then come home to find him asleep on the couch while burglars are carting off your valuables. Except in this scenario, the security guard is the government, the house is our collective treasury, and the burglars are those alleged fraudsters who are lapping all the way to the bank. And let's not talk about context here. This money, these massive grants, were part of COVID-era relief packages. Remember those? The government, in its infamous wisdom, decided to flood the zone with cash. Crazy cash, to help people who need these unprecedented crises. The problem? When you open the floodgates for this, wide open, without rigorous checks and balances, you don't just get a trickle aid effect, you get a tsunami of opportunity for scammers. It's a classic bait and switch. Promise help for the vulnerable, but create a free-for-all for the scrupulous and the weird people. Nick Shirley, this 23-year-old YouTuber, is doing what our highly paid, seemingly well-respected, well-resourced state and federal agencies should be doing from day one. He's showing up, asking basic questions, and exposing what appears to be blatant, in-your-face corruption. Where were the state auditors? Where were the social workers? Where were the compliance officers? Were they too busy to diversify training or perhaps working from home? Oblivious to the fact that millions of dollars were being siphoned off for phantom childcare services. It's a declaration of actual duty, plain and simple. The fact that one of these learning centers can even spell learning on its public sign, it's just a hilarious gaffe. It is truly an entire problem. It screams, we don't care. We know you're not checking. It's a simple symbol of contempt these alleged fraudsters have for the system. And frankly, the system's apparently contempt for its own rules and regulations, and the taxpayers are supposed to just say, okay, no problem. If they can't even get the basic spelling right on their front storefront, what makes anyone think they're running a legitimate operation, let alone caring for children? It is a clown show, but with tragic consequences.
You just watched a snippet of a report that went viral, carried out by a 23-year-old independent journalist and YouTuber by the name of Nick Shirley. Now, he describes himself as a YouTube journalist, and along with a gentleman by the name of David, The two of them visited various child daycare centers that had been receiving grants funded by state and federal taxes to show that these entities are not actually operating as child daycare centers. In fact, they believe that these centers are committing fraud off the taxpayers' dime. Now, this story kind of piggybacks off of something that broke earlier this year in November. There was a huge story that was published in the New York Times about fraud cases in the Minneapolis area. And most of these, nonprofits or these little businesses that were popping up and basically benefiting from COVID era public money were Somali owned. Now, two things are happening at the same time. On one hand, these fraud cases appear to be very serious and very real. On the other hand, the issue itself has become incredibly politicized, with the right kind of using it, the right and also, let's keep it real, Israel defenders kind of using it as a distraction to both demonize Muslims in the country, demonize immigrants in the country, while also taking some of the heat and pressure off of Israel's ongoing genocide and expansionist project in the Middle East. However, regardless of the bad faith actors who might be using this for terrible political purposes, the fact remains that it appears that close to $9 billion, according to prosecutors, have been stolen from taxpayers in the Minneapolis area as a result of these fraudulent businesses. And I want to give you more details about it in just a second. But before I do, Cenk, your 2 cents.
Yeah, so this fraud obviously happened. People have been arrested already. On the other hand, people have been arrested already, so it's not like a YouTuber figured it out a day ago. So I want to get into the details. The question isn't whether fraud happened, it's how big it is and why it hasn't been stopped. And then the second issue is, how much is this happening all across the country in so many different states? And I want to give you some examples, including blue states like New York and California.
Yes, absolutely. Because while this story in particular is terrible when you consider the amount of money that was allegedly defrauded from taxpayers, states like California have defrauded taxpayers at a much larger, figure. And I'll give you some of those details in just a minute. I just want everyone to care about fraud and theft of taxpayer money, regardless of who does it, instead of politicizing it for some other agenda. Now, why did this YouTube journalist, Nick Shirley, decide to do this? Well, he says he wanted to confront the people who are making millions of dollars from social services, including meal programs, housing assistance, and health services. So David, the gentleman who you'll see in this video alongside Shirley, claims to have uncovered more than 1,000 fraudulent service-oriented businesses, more than 800 of which are Somali owned. So that is the claim. And the whole point of the video is to literally go to these businesses and show that the businesses aren't even operating as what they are reporting in order to get the government grants. So they emphasize childcare centers where Shirley shows up during weekday business hours to find that there are actually like no children present. There are also some pretty extreme claims that we need more evidence for, which I'll get into in just a second. So a claim was just kind of casually made about how this money is then being siphoned off and sent over to Al-Shabaab, a terrorist group that operates out of Somalia. Now, there hasn't been any evidence provided for it. One publication, City Journal, claimed that that was the case, but I found their reporting on that lacking. I think fraud is happening. I just don't think that you need to go the extra mile and make a claim as extreme as they're funding a terrorist group in Somalia until you have the goods, until you can actually prove that's happening. And let's also keep in mind that the US government does a good enough job stealing our money to fund foreign terror groups as it is. So maybe there should be some ire directed toward the US government for doing that willingly on a regular basis. But with that in mind, I want to give you a little piece of what the video uncovered.
The areas of fraud that I have numbers for are mostly related to childcare. This is massive fraud that is beyond anyone's imagination, the scope. And so, for example, there's a childcare not far from here in Minneapolis that has two childcares listed at the same address. And together, they're licensed supposedly for 120 children. I have never seen a single child there ever, and I've been by that place at least 100 times. This place right here. Yes.
We're outside of it.
Well, this is actually 2 daycares are registered here. One of them is Mako, which you see on this sign. The other one is Mini Child Care Center. And between the two of these child care centers, they're pulling in about $3 million a year. And there are no children. Every facility as you go to, the windows will be blocked out so you can't see in. There's nobody here. You won't see a single child at any of these facilities.
So over and over again, you'll see them go visit various childcare facilities, and you'll see that there's no one there. There are no children, and you know, sometimes they'll find workers there, and they'll ask some questions. The workers are very evasive, and I should note that while yes, it is true that prosecutors have already been investigating similar fraud cases in the area, and there have already been arrests. What's important to know about the businesses that were visited by Shirley and David here, we're still receiving government money. Okay, so this is from Dina Winter. She writes that Tiki Brown, commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Children, Youth, and Families, said none of the 10 childcare centers that YouTuber Nick Shirley recently visited for his viral video had their payments paused, although a couple were previously closed down by the state, and state workers are doing visits to the rest today. So these facilities, even though there was prior knowledge by the state that there was fraud going on, these facilities were still receiving these government grants. And guys, that's a problem for a number of different reasons. Number one, it's the theft of taxpayer money. But more importantly, it's the theft of taxpayer money that is meant to help the needy. Okay? It is wrong, and it shouldn't be defended based on the skin color or the ethnicity or the identity of the fraudsters committing it. But nonetheless, prosecutors had been looking into this as well. They allege that Minnesota may have lost up to $9 billion in misappropriated aid. Charges for at least 5 new alleged fraudsters were announced earlier this month by Joe Thompson, first assistant U.S. District Attorney for the state of Minnesota, including allegedly fraudulent Medicaid claims involving a housing stabilization services program. Thompson characterized the schemes, each of which have allegedly collected millions, as a fraud tourism scheme that is under investigation by state and federal agencies, including the FBI, Homeland Security, and the Justice Department. Plus, there had been credible reporting on this previously as well. On November 29th, the New York Times reported on how federal charges had been filed against dozens of people, felonies in fact, related to stealing hundreds of millions of dollars from a government program meant to keep children fed during the COVID pandemic. Over the last 5 years, law enforcement officials say fraud took root in pockets of Minnesota's Somali diaspora, as scores of individuals made small fortunes by setting up companies that billed state agencies for millions of dollars worth of social services that were never provided. Again, just want to reemphasize, this is money that is stolen from taxpayers that was meant to help needy families, hungry children. Federal prosecutors say that 59 people have been convicted in those schemes so far, and that more than $1 billion in taxpayer money has been stolen in 3 plots they are investigating. So there are other examples. I'll give you one other one. So they focused on a nonprofit called Feeding Our Future, which became a partner to dozens of local businesses that were enrolled as feeding sites meant to feed children during the COVID pandemic. And then in addition to that, hundreds of providers were reimbursed for assistance they claimed to have provided to homeless people. I know a lot about this in California, that federal authorities say were never even provided. So if you care about the homeless, you should be furious about fraud cases like this. But unfortunately, it has quickly devolved into a politicized race issue. And I think the way that the right has talked about this story is to blame for that. Because if you immediately politicize it and make it about race, every action is going to have an equal reaction. And then the story devolves into race politics or culture war nonsense.
Whoa, hold on a second. Blaming the right for politicizing it? That's not just deflection. It's a textbook example of shooting the messenger. When you uncover a massive fraud scheme, allegedly involving a specific demographic that has received significant public funding, and people start asking questions, that's not politicizing. That's called seeking accountability. To immediately pivot and blame those who highlight the issue rather than the alleged perpetrators or the systematic failures that enabled the freaking fraud in general, it's frankly flat out intellectually dishonest. This is the oldest trick in the book. When the facts are inconvenient, when they expose a narrative you don't like, just scream racism or politicization. It's a cheap tactic designed to shut down debate, to silence legitimate criticism, and to protect the status quo of incompetence and corruption. It's like the magician misdirection. Look over here for the politicization while the billions of dollars disappear over there. We're not falling for it. Let's be clear. Fraud is fraud. It's not ethnicity, no religion, no political affiliation. It's a crime against every taxpayer, regardless of their background, and if the alleged fraudsters happen to belong to a particular group, that's a factual observation, not an act of bigotry. To suggest that simply reporting on who is allegedly committing the fraud is politicizing or blaming the right is to imply that certain groups should be immune from scrutiny. And that, my friends, is a dangerous road to go on. And especially, you don't want to have that. It's created a two-tiered system of justice, where some are held accountable and others are given a pass under the guise of sensitivity. That's not equality, that's selective outrage.
When at the heart of this issue is that we have states that are running these programs so poorly with so little oversight that literally billions in taxpayer money that's meant to help the needy gets stolen. You should be upset about that. I mean, at least I feel upset about that. But I'll get to the rhetoric that I'm referring to and give you specific examples in just a minute. Cenk, I want you to jump in first.
Yeah, so there are three potential issues here. I think two of them are nonsense. One of them is super important and totally ignored. One is immigration. Oh, the immigrants did it. The other is, oh, there's Somali/Muslims. Ooh, the Muslims did it. Okay, and then the third is fraud. So as I'm gonna show you here, is it just the Somalis or just immigrants? Absolutely not. So I don't think those are the two main issues at all, except for how they relate to political correctness, which I'll get to as a larger topic in a second. So the fraud is the real issue. Now, we know there's fraud here. There's already been arrests, convictions, etc. What I don't know is the depth of the fraud because, look guys, the guy who did the YouTube videos, he actually started doing them months ago, to give him credit on that, right? So it's not like he's just jumped on it now. So I don't want you to be mistaken about that. Now, having said that, it became supernova viral just a couple of days ago, right? But well before that, we already had 86 arrests, 59 convictions. So they had to do a long process of investigation, arrest, trial, and then conviction. In fact, 5 new cases were launched, as Anna just told you, earlier this month, before any of this went viral. So then the question is this just hyped up stuff about things that already happened, but we get to go Somali, Muslim, immigrant, right? Or is there more to it? And it seems like there is more to it. That's my assessment based on what I've seen. And so as you know, they point out the places that have not been shut down yet, that are pretending to take care of children and are not. They should look into more of those. Now I see the millions piling up in the video and in the reports, but 5 million, 10 million, 50 million is not 9 billion. So the prosecutor said 9 billion. I don't know, I assume has some extra information. 9 billion is a giant number. So if it really is that much, then they missed a lot of it, and people are right to be enraged about how much they missed. If it turns out, no, they had actually gotten a good deal of them, but there was still another half or another quarter or et cetera to go, great, let's go get those sons of bitches, right? But it's not like this collapse of no one doing anything, because obviously they were doing something. The question is, was it enough? Okay, now, so that's the first part of the story.
Okay, I gotta jump in on that because there's a lot of nuance there, and people are gonna get upset at me literally just telling the truth, because what's happening in Minnesota is very similar to what's been happening in California, right? So the argument you're making, Cenk, is what's the big deal? I mean, the federal prosecutors are looking into it. They've been investigating it. It's not like no one's looked into it, right? Is that what you're saying? Okay, what are you saying then?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying if, let's make up numbers here. Let's say it's $100 million scandal and they already prosecuted $50 million worth of fraud. I'm saying go get the other 50 million. But guys, don't panic. This is a normal fraud thing that happens in all the states, which is what I was about to get to, which you're about to get to, et cetera. But by the way, we should be super vigilant about all of that going forward. So I'm not saying it's not a big deal at all. But if it's $100 million problem, that's a relatively normal, right? If it's a $9 billion problem, that's not normal. And that means they missed the great majority of the fraud. And then I'm more concerned, and I'm also concerned about that in every state.
So let me give you some context so you can kind of understand how a number as massive as $9 billion could be credible. So if you look at the state of California, which I've done a lot of research and investigative reporting on, literal published investigative reporting that's gone through laborious editing processes and everything. Basically, during the COVID pandemic, if you guys can all remember, there was a massive influx of federal aid given to the states, and for good reason, right? People lost their jobs out of no fault of their own. Government shutdowns happened, and there was a lot of fear that people were basically going to find themselves in unbearable poverty, unable to feed their children as a result of not being able to work. Now, unfortunately, that money and the influx of money being sent to states also led to an influx of these fraudulent nonprofits and businesses popping up. And so in the state of California, Gavin Newsom saw COVID as an ideal opportunity to do something to provide permanent supportive housing for the homeless population. So suddenly you see all of these nonprofits and these homeless service providers pop up. And it turns out that in 5 years, 24, and this is according to a state audit. I'm not making this up. You guys can look into it yourselves if you don't believe me. A state audit indicated that $24 billion, billion with a B, in homeless aid in the state of California is unaccounted for. And so did our state prosecutors do something about it? Well, the state attorney general, Bonta, did do one civil lawsuit. Ooh, thanks for the civil lawsuit. But it had to be the Trump administration's federal prosecutors to actually do a criminal investigation. And through the criminal investigation, they've already found not one, but 2 developers who did wire fraud, all sorts of crazy fraudulent nonsense in order to siphon off hundreds of millions of dollars from Newsom's signature homeless housing program that was funded partially through the COVID money that was given to the state of California. So the point that I'm trying to make is, yeah, the federal prosecutors are looking into it now, but the states where the fraud took place really just wanted to either ignore it, or they were super soft on the alleged fraudsters. And that's why people are frustrated and angry. And yes, I get that in the case of Minnesota, they're trying to make this about race, which is disgusting, when in reality, there is a very real problem in this country with poorly run state programs that are supposed to help the needy, but oftentimes are riddled with fraud.
Yeah, so let me give voice to some of our members here. And then I want to back up what Anna's saying, because that's the direction I was going to go. Creative Pixie writes in on Twitch, you may want to do some looking into actual videos in which they actually went to the daycare before it was actually open. The hours on the door listed are 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. This is all in an effort to discredit Tim Wallace's Mike Pillow's running against him and being bankrolled by Trump. Guys,
okay.
So hold on. So first of all, you might have seen 1 or 2 things as separate videos, but be careful about all the videos. Is there really a child care program being run from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m.? Less likely, okay? So the sign on one of the videos, one of the centers there, and you saw it in the first video, is a learning center, but learning is misspelled. Now, that's both funny, but also emblematic, because that goes to show you, not only does no one there care about learning, but no one from the state went and guys, oh, this is embarrassing, guys. We're giving you millions of dollars for education of kids, and you misspell learning on your outward facing public sign. Let's go fix that. That means no one's home. No one's paying any attention. And that goes to the core of this. So do I know that they're targeting Tim Walz? Yes. Do I know that it's because they were attacking Somalis even before this video came out, and this turned out to be a perfect little talking point for some of those folks? Yes, I know that, right? But having said that, now let me back up what Anna is saying. Look, guys, and for the right wing, I'll use more blue states here. I guarantee you it's the same in the red states. There's two different issues here. One is government incompetence. They give money and then they go, I'm done with it, and they don't chase it down. I'll give you a really interesting example. It's the counter example that is the exception that proves the rule. In Houston, there's this one woman who went in and cleaned up how they were dealing with the homeless situation, and she found enormous, unbelievable Kafkaesque bureaucracy, where people would be in charge of the same thing but never talk to one another. They'd be in charge of one part and then there's a second part, but the people in charge of the two different parts would never talk to each other. It was massive inefficiency, massive overspending, etc. And when she, to Anna's earlier point, when she fixed it, homelessness went down by 40%. So you're not helping the homeless when you run an inefficient bureaucratic government. You're not helping any of your citizens, right? So she helped the homeless more than anyone else, but that was one city that they did it in. I guarantee you that if you did it in almost all the major cities, I don't care, blue, red, whatever it might be, and the states, that you would find similar problems. Okay, now the second problem is not just government inefficiency and incompetence. You have a lot of groups. And when I say groups, I don't just mean racial religious groups like Somalis or other ethnic groups like I'm gonna talk about, but I mean, here, let me give you an ethnic group example and a non-ethnic group. So in New York, Hasidic Jews have committed one fraud case after another, after another, after another. And in fact, we've reported on it in the past. It's very similar to this story in Minnesota, but it gets less coverage, and in fact, when you cover it, they go, no, that's it, you're an anti-Semite, and you should just let them, you should shut up about the fraud that they're doing, because by talking about it, you're making it seem like all Jews do it. But nobody said all Jews do it. It was just that particular Hasidic community that was doing it in New York, right? Not all Somalis are doing it, not all Jews are doing it, not all Hasidic Jews are doing it. But because of the sensitivities, sometimes because the Democrats prevented in some of the states, but in the case of New York, it's a lot of Republicans who are like, you better not mention it. You better not mention it, right? And so no, we're allowed to mention anything we want. So now
no, it's our money. It's our money. No, we get to mention it no matter who does it. I don't care if it's Hasidic Jews. I don't care if it's Armenians, which by the way, I remember reporting on an Armenian Medicare fraud ring in Los Angeles that got arrested. Armenians were super upset at me. So what? I don't care. That's my money, that's our money, and it's being deprived from the very people who deserve that money. It is the theft of our resources, and we should not defend it because we want to defend a particular ethnicity or racial group. And by the way, let me one-up you on what you're mentioning about the Hasidic Jews in New York, Cenk, because Chris Menahan gave really interesting examples of fraudsters who were pardoned by Donald Trump. These are guys who stole our money, much like the Somalis. They're getting all the attention in Minnesota. Let's go to Graphic 8. I want to give you some examples. So there's an organization known as Alpha Institute, and their whole point is to provide support services to the Jewish population in the US prison system. So these are the people that you're seeing right now that have been pardoned by Donald Trump. One was Philip Esformes, the king of Medicare fraud, who stole $1.3 billion from Medicare, Medicaid, and drugged patients with Oxycontin and fentanyl to get them to stay longer at his facilities. We're not done yet. Here's another example. There's Shalom Weiss, who looted a life insurance company for $450 million and defrauded elderly Americans out of their life savings. His crimes earned him his own episode of American Greed. He was also pardoned by Donald Trump. Let me give you one other example. Perhaps the worst was Democrat mega donor Solomon Melgen, an eye doctor who stole $73 million from Medicare by persuading elderly patients to undergo excruciating tests and treatments they didn't need for diseases they didn't have. So these guys get pardoned, and not a peep from the right wing on that. But when it comes to fraud that's committed by, ethnic groups that they don't like, oh, then we're going to make a big deal about that. How about we make a big deal about all of it? Because at the end of the day, it is the theft of our money that is supposed to help the needy, not line the pockets of disgusting scammers and fraudsters.
Yeah. So look, again, distinction between voters and politicians and pundits. So if Republican voters knew that there was all those groups in New York and other places that were ripping us off and Trump pardoned them, I think at least half of them would be super mad about that. If they knew that Senator Rick Scott from Florida committed the largest Medicare fraud in American history.
Precisely, that's the mic drop moment right there. It's not just about individual grifters. It's about the system that's been built, brick by bureaucratic brick, to be ripe for exploitation. When the government throws billions of dollars at problems without proper oversight, and when the mainstream media turns a blind eye or, even worse, actively tries to spin the narrative, you create a perfect storm for fraud. It's a silent conspiracy of incompetence and willful ignorance that bleeds taxpayers dry and leaves the truly needed in lurch. Think about the staggering numbers mentioned. $24 billion in California homeless aid unaccounted for. Let that sink in for a moment. That's not a typo. That's more than the GDP of many small nations. And what's the response from the state's political leadership? A shrug and a token civil lawsuit, while the homeless crisis on the streets of California cities often worsens? It took federal prosecutors from an administration often demonized by the very people who should be demanding answers to actually uncover criminal wire fraud and get convictions. This isn't just being soft on crime. It's a profound failure of governing, a betrayal of public trust so deep it should shake the foundations of our state capitals. And the media's role in this is equally infuriating. They will dedicate 24/7 coverage to a political gaffe or a cultural war skirmish. But when it comes to billions of dollars in taxpayer money vanishing, they either ignore it, bury it, or, as we heard, try to reframe it as the right being politicizing. What? Why? Because it challenges their preferred narrative that big government programs are always the answer, and that throwing money at problems will magically solve them? It doesn't. It exposes the inconvenient truth that unchecked progressive policies often lead to massive waste and corruptions, not compassionate solutions. They'd rather protect their ideological allies than expose the truth to their viewers and readers. It's not journalism, it's activism masquerading as reporting. Complete and utter bullshit.
They might be super mad about that. But how does our national media treat the two different stories? One is the Somalis in Minnesota. Well, you just saw it. It's like the biggest news story in the country. And every mainstream media outlet's talking about it, and they're going 200% on it. Even though it's a right-wing issue, and there's a lot of people think they're the liberal media, but in this case, they're like, remember, dirty Muslims doing fraud, everyone in the world should collapse in on them. This is the biggest problem in America. Now you have, one of the stories Anna just read you is $450 million. And that's not speculative, that already happened. The other one was 73 million. Not only is it gigantic, but Donald Trump pardons them for no reason. It should be a larger story. I haven't seen it in national media almost at all, Do you see it going viral? No. Because look, these are both real transgressions, and neither side or no sides should cover them up. And that doesn't help your side anyway. When you lie to cover up fraud, I can't think of anything more politically damaging. And if you think you're gonna get away with it, you're nuts, okay? Especially in this new atmosphere. So it's just the emphasis. And where does the national media choose to put their emphasis? So then last thing, back to California and the example that Anna gave. So Anna's written brilliantly about this, and we'll put the links in the description box below if you're watching this later on YouTube or other platforms. And so first of all, we've given $24 billion to the homelessness crisis in California, and homelessness has gone up, not down. Half the money can't be accounted for, and our politicians go, so what? We can't find it. So why is there not a much larger outrage in California and across the country? Because the press, out of political correctness, homelessness, no, don't say anything, say anything, right? Oh, but brother, stealing the money doesn't help the homeless. It hurts the homeless. Oh, there's homelessness. Oh, no, it's nonprofits. Oh, no, nonprofits. All our friends are in nonprofits. And that doesn't mean all nonprofits are bad. There's tons of wonderful nonprofits. But there's also nonprofits that are in the robbery business. And it's the job of the press. I mean, look, we're having to rely on rando YouTubers to go around knocking on doors and stuff. Shouldn't the LA Times, New York Times, Washington Post, and all the local papers be going absolutely ballistic over all of these stories? In California, where's the money? Where did the money go? So we should all be outraged by all of this fraud and don't get it twisted about which group in that particular case did the fraud as if that's the real issue. That's not the issue at all. The government and in de facto the media allowing and aiding and abetting this fraud throughout all the states is the real issue.
And there you have it, folks. The frustrating, infuriating truth about government programs and the fraud that too often plagues them. From Minnesota to California, it's the same story. Billions of your tax dollars disappearing while the people who need help are left behind. But we can't let them get away with it. We have to demand accountability, expose the corruption, and make sure our voices are heard. So what do you think? Tell me about it. Are you tired of seeing your tax dollars vanish into thin air? Do you think the media and politicians are doing enough to fight this fraud? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this breakdown insightful, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with everyone you know. Because the more people who are aware, the harder it is for these fraudsters and the incompetent officials who enable them to keep stealing from us. Let's make some noise and demand change now.